How's everybody today? Good. After looking at the last game, I felt like our players did a really good job of competing in the game, executed really well, probably the best we played overall all year long. I think everybody was sort of unified in the fact that this was one of those trips where everybody was accepted a challenge to defeat the opponent, and that was their focus, and that's why we made the decision to, on offense and defense, everybody that played in the game really was the player of the game because everybody bought in and did exactly what we wanted to do. It's great that Damian got recognized as SEC player, offensive player, and Ross, offensive lineman. Those are great honors, for those guys, and hopefully we can build on some of the improvements that we made, continue to improve as a team. We look forward to the SEC home opener this week against a very good Ole Miss team. This is a team that has, beat us twice, 2 out of the last 3 years, and we played some really shootout kind of games with them, and they've had 2 really good wins this year, and fourth nationally in passing, make a lot of explosive plays, really good quarterback, probably the best group of receivers collectively we played against all year. Very disruptive on defense in terms of the way they play, create a lot of negative plays and tackles for losses. So it's going to be important that, we do a good job of communicating and try to minimize that as much as we can. So this will be a real challenging game for us in a lot of different ways, and try to do the best we can to get our players ready to play even better this week.
Okay, we'll start here with Chandler.
Ole Miss has a new offensive coordinator, Phil Longo, who had a lot of success at Sam Houston State, throwing all over. What have you seen from his offense, and kind of a follow-up? Are there any challenges preparing for a team with a first-year head coach or an interim head coach like Matt Luke is?
Well, I think that, we have a lot of respect for the coaches who have been at Ole Miss. We also have a lot of respect for Matt Luke and his capabilities as a head coach and the way their team is playing right now and the success that they've had so far this year. I think the offense is a little different than what it's been in the past. Certainly make a lot of explosive plays, lots of RPOs with all the runs. Very, very challenging offense to try to defend. Everybody's got to do a really good job in this offense, I think, to be able to execute the way you need to, not to give up explosive plays, as well as to be able to stop the run, control the quarterback. This is a very, very challenging, spread out, very good skill player, very good utilization of their skill players, offensive scheme that their new offensive coordinator employs.
Back middle with Cecil.
Coach, there's been a great deal of conversation over the weekend about politics and football. How do you handle that with your players, and what, if any, are your opinions on that?
Well, I'm just a football coach, and I don't keep up with all that stuff as much as maybe everybody else does, especially during the season, especially when we're playing games. But, to me, some of the things that we do in our country, I grew up, they were unifying events, and it's a little painful to see that those things, are not so. And right now, but I also respect everyone's right not to be censored in terms of the way they express their beliefs. So I'm just a coach. I don't have the answers to all the questions. I know that most good things come out of love and respect and compassion and unifying people, and most bad things come out of hate and dislike and deceit, and hopefully we could sort of focus on the above, not the below.
Go back over here on the other side with Ralph. Get a mic right.
Coach, to change the subject to Minkah Fitzpatrick, super versatile. How does his versatility come into play against a team like Ole Miss with the way they spread the field and use a lot of different receivers?
Well, I think having a guy like Minka really in a game like this really helps you because there's a lot of matchup issues. You know, when they have 4 wide receivers on the field, you know, if you play 5 defensive backs, that's not really quite enough. If you play 6, maybe you match up a little bit better, but maybe have some other issues when it comes to other things that you want to try to defend. So, but when you have players like Minka, it gives you the diversity to do some of these things, and he's very good at it because of his adaptability. He's smart. He can learn multiple tasks with minimal reps. So it's when you don't have players like that, I think that's when you really have lots of problems with teams like this.
Come back over here to Charlie.
What have you seen from Ole Miss as a defensive front, and what have you thought of the job that Freddie Roach has done coaching those guys up?
Well, they do a really good job up front. They're very aggressive. They attack. They attack you up front. I think they use their quickness to their advantage. That's why they've created a lot of negative plays. They play hard, and I think that's always a positive reflection on the coach.
Come back over here in the middle with Michael.
You guys have outscored opponents 55-3 in the first quarter. What do you think is behind that?
Well, I guess the first thing I would think of is teams well prepared, get off to a fast start. That's the first thing that I would think of. That we execute well in the beginning of the game. The big focus in the last game was not to start fast. There's 2 parts: start fast, finish strong. So the start and fast part we got right. The finish and strong part we hadn't gotten right. But I thought we got it right in the last game, and hopefully that's what it's going to take. You know, not to let good teams that have, you know, high octane offenses like this team and just quite a few other teams that we're going to play that have good quarterbacks and good skill guys. You allow them to get the ball enough, and you don't keep sort of pushing and being aggressive on offense. They end up taking advantage of it, get back into games, and score quickly on you with explosive plays. So that's going to be something that's important for us to continue to do.
Back up front here with Mark.
How would you assess how Damian's played through the first 4 games? Damian Harris.
Well, he's a player of the week. I mean, that's a pretty good reflection on. He's had good performance, good production. He's been very, very consistent in his play. You know, I really like the roles that these guys have played at running back and embraced and been very productive in all regards. I think it helps them long term stay healthy for the season, stay fresh, and you know, Damian's been our most productive guy so far. He practices well. He's well prepared. He's a good receiver. He's a good blocker. So he plays well without the ball, which probably goes unnoticed by most people, but is very important to the rest of the offense.
Back on this side with John Cena.
A 2-part question. One is how important is it that you guys are doing such a good job protecting the football on offense? And 2, how much of a credit is that to Jalen's decision making and then the ball carrier's just proper technique?
Well, it's good, but the ball was on the ground 3 times in the last game. So they didn't get them, so we didn't turn it over. The difference is the ball wasn't on the ground any in the other games. And I think that when you're playing against an aggressive ball hawking type team, which Vanderbilt was and which Ole Miss will be, you've got to have great attention to taking care of the ball. The ball. We got to attack the ball. We finally got a fumble, caused a fumble in this last game. But we have to do a better job of taking care of the ball because the ball was on the ground 3 times in this game. And that's really, really important. Turnover ratio is one of the most important things statistically in winning and losing, and that's something that we want to continue to emphasize.
Back with Joe.
Coach, it seems like traditionally locker rooms have just done so much better with civil discourse than society kind of as a whole. Can you speak to that? Do you think there's any reason for that?
Well, I think that when players are on a team, they kind of respect. I think respect and trust are two things that make a team what it is. People respect and trust the principles and values of the organization, but they also respect and trust each other. And I think that because everybody's sort of bought into the same things, you know, you have the same goal, you have the same spirit in terms of what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. And I think it is a very unifying factor when everybody respects, and because you respect the people, you respect the individual differences, you know, as well. So I think that's why they call it team. I think that's where you get togetherness from. Everybody sort of is trying to work toward the same standard. Everybody's trying to support the other guy and help him to be able to do that. So a lot of the things that make a good team are the very things that create a lot of togetherness. And I don't think that you have very good team unity and team spirit if you don't have that kind of unifying force in the locker room. But I think it comes from respect and trust that gets developed because of everybody sort of buying into the same goals and have the same aspirations for what they want to accomplish and what they want to do and how they support each other.
This side with Ryan.
You guys ran a lot of jet sweeps last year, especially early in the season. How come that play hasn't been as much of, I guess, a prominent element in the playbook this year?
Well, you know, we have run a few, not many. We do some of the motions off of it and run some plays off of it and complement some of the things that we did last year with some other things that we're doing right now. But some of those things you kind of read, you know, when the guy goes in motion, how's the defense adjusting? And sometimes they don't leave enough players backside. Sometimes they rotate and really have the sweep stopped. So sometimes it's what the defense does that determines whether you want to hand the ball off to the guy or not, or pitch it to him. But we feel that we're a little more proficient in some other areas now that maybe we don't have to depend on that quite as much.
Last two, Alex and Joe.
On your radio show last week, you talked about your altitude sickness and kind of how you were bothered by the way Colorado State finished. How has your opinion of this team kind of changed just in this last month, maybe since preseason, and your approach with the players as well?
Well, we were very positive with the players last week in terms of how we approached what we wanted to try to accomplish and what we wanted to try to do. But we also challenged the players in that, you know, we really hadn't what I call defeated a team. Winning a game is one thing, but defeating the other team is entirely different. And I felt that in this last game, it was the first time that we really did that. Where we played for 60 minutes, we stayed focused on what we were doing. We didn't lose our sense of urgency or intensity at any time during the game. And that's really what we wanted to accomplish because I think that's very important to being successful in our league because of the quality of opponents that you have week in and week out. And that's kind of got to become who you are. That's got to become a personality. And I was concerned about that, but feel much better about it. But now the challenge is can we sustain that?
Right here. Nick, oftentimes during games, when the defense is off the field, you're communicating with Minka on the sidelines. How does he take, your communication with him during the game and then apply that directly onto the field?
Well, I communicate with really all the defensive guys. Sometimes I communicate with the offensive guys. Sometimes I communicate with Jalen about certain things. But, you know, players are always, I think it's how do you approach a player? I never, ever want to approach a player and have a player think that I'm disappointed in them. I think players sense that. I think it affects their confidence. I'm always approaching players on they did this. This is how we need to try to react to that, or we need to adjust to it this way, or they're playing this, or to go back to the jet sweep, they're spoken the safeties every time, so this or that may be a better play against that. So you're really just constantly teaching during the game for the next situation in the game. And I think the way our players are sort of geared, because if you notice, you know, our coaches are with our players coaching them what happened in the last series, what plays they ran, what we did well against the plays, how we fit that run, how we matched the pattern on that pass, whatever, or something that we didn't do exactly right, or we made a mental error on, or most of the time in the first 15 plays of the game, we get something that's entirely different, all right, than what we practiced or seen. It's not at all uncommon for anyone, I guess, but we seem to see it just about every week. So being on the same page in how we're going to adapt to and adjust all that, and I think our players are used to that. But what I do during the game is no different than what I do in practice or in meetings or whatever. So it's not out of character that, hey, all of a sudden coach is talking to me or telling me something and he doesn't even really know what's going on. I think they think I know what's going on, so we don't have that issue. All right, thanks.